What's up, YeshGamers? Robert the Bruce here, and this video may seem kind of like inflicting punishment on yourself, and it sort of is. But it's all with the goal of upping our basic FPS skill set, with a specific focus on getting ready to rock out in Battlefield 1. Now the title says it all. It's basically focused on using a gun with iron sights that you don't like. Battlefield 1 isn't going to be tossing red dot sights at us to equip on our weapons. We have a lot of guns with some very poorly designed sight pictures because, hey, that's how it was back then. Now for me, one gun that I'm not particularly a fan of is the Groza 1, and it boils down to the iron sights. Now similar to how we all may like our coffee prepared different ways, a lot of this will depend on personal preference. There may be a gun that someone else thinks has perfectly fine iron sights, but for you it's a struggle to get a good sight picture out of them. It's going to change for some of us, that's perfectly fine. If you have a gun that you remember hating because when you first unlocked it the iron sights were brutal, well, it's time to revisit that. Using a gun with sights that you struggle with forces you to not rely so heavily on them. It makes you work on what I call the hip fire to ADS transition. Now, if you've never thought much about it, this is one of the biggest areas that separates great players from just decent players, and it's often one of the biggest deciding factors in each gun battle that you get into. Going to aim down the sights, but having your aim a ways off requires you to then compensate. Then it's very easy to overcompensate while you're aiming down the sights, and you end up with a back and forth motion just spraying bullets and hoping for the best. Hence the classic phrase, spray and pray. Now, players fall into this trap of not starting off the process of acquiring a target the right way, which leads to wild adjustments being made after aiming down the sights, which leads to bullets flying everywhere. Now if you're fairly consistent on lining up sights on the bad guy with the gun at your hip and then ADSing right onto them, you'll be able to kill much faster and you won't need to rely on the actual sights of the gun nearly as much. You won't be panicking that your aim is off and you'll take down a lot more baddies in those medium to long range encounters. Now I covered this pretty extensively in a 4-part series I did some time ago on increasing overall accuracy. Players too often put their focus only on how they handle their weapon while they're aiming down the sights. They spend all their energy trying to get that right, without realizing that a fundamental building block of good aim is where your sights start at when you begin to ADS. Now another benefit of training yourself to use a gun with poor iron sights is it'll force you to learn trigger control. Now when you have a great sight picture of your enemy, it's way too easy to just hold down the trigger and try to manage the full auto recoil. You can see the bad guy, so just keeping the bullets flying and trying to stay on target, it makes most sense, right? Wrong. The longer full auto is engaged, the more wild the bullets will fly. It's built into the game mechanics. So even if you're keeping the target in your sights, your bullets won't necessarily hit them the longer you're holding down the trigger. This is why burst or tap firing for longer range targets is so important, and training yourself with poor iron sights will help you accomplish this. Now if you're struggling to clearly see the enemy after you fire a couple rounds, well, it forces you to burst fire so that you can keep a decent idea of what aiming adjustments need to be made. That's the problem with having too many fancy gadgets. They make playing the game seem easier, so players fall into bad habits and forget the fundamentals. When we don't have crutches to rely on, like red dot sights, we're forced to remember the basics of FPS gaming and Battlefield. This ups our core skill level and makes us overall better FPS players. Okay, so how do we run through this training without completely ruining our gaming night, right? Well, we're using a gun we don't like, which means we'll probably struggle to get kills and then we get frustrated. My answer to that is two things: hardcore and team deathmatch. In hardcore, just about every gun is good. They all kill quickly, fewer bullets are needed to drop baddies, and everyone's already missing some of their normal crutches like the minimap. And if you find yourself getting frustrated while trying to train with a gun that has sights you don't like, switch to hardcore. And potentially, before you do that, even just switching to team deathmatch can do the job. If you're playing an objective-based game mode, it's easy to get distracted trying to go after the objective. Normally I preach about doing that, and that's a good thing, but for this training exercise may not be the best idea. Hop over to team deathmatch, just focus on getting kills. And if you're still struggling, switch to hardcore and see if you do any better. Now again, this is a building block. This isn't a setup to go try and set a new personal record for kills in a game. This is an investment. And if that doesn't sound fun, you of course can continue playing like you always do. But if you struggle with aiming, or you only have one or two guns you feel like you're okay with, well, you won't get better until you push yourself a little bit. Now, I hope this video helped you out. Gave you a few ideas to go try and boost your core FPS skill level. At the end of the day, we all have more fun when we're playing well, so taking some time to work on the fundamentals just makes sense. As always, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you on the battlefield.
敌枪来了，快去拿好！